Today on the flight path, we're crashing into U.S. drone soccer, a full contact sport where students design, build, and compete. Our special guest today, David Roberts, he's going to show us how the future of flight starts here. Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Flight Path, Sonoran Desert Institute's podcast about the expansive world of uncrewed technology. Today, we have a special guest with us. His name's David Roberts. He's the president of U.S. Drone Soccer. How you doing today, David?
I'm doing well, thank you. Nice to see you, Christian. Nice to meet you, James.
It's good to see you. Yep, and we're joined by Steve Ross and James McDaniels. Steve's director of marketing. You've seen him, and James McDaniels have definitely heard from him, our program chair for Uncrewed Tech. David, can you tell us about U.S. Drone Soccer?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to. U.S. Drone Soccer is dedicated, first off, just to student success. Our mission is to inspire students to pursue education and careers in aerospace by leading students to build, program, fly, and become successful team members by providing that path for that, and then a program or a hierarchy of competition and events that ultimately end up highlighting the student skills in engineering and aviation, teamwork, and leadership. The whole program begins with students who are led by educators or leaders where they build their first drone from a kit. Now, we think that we're finding students that have never considered themselves necessarily one to be on a team. They see others that's a sport, and they're not going to be the basketball players or the baseball players. They're the kids maybe sitting quietly in the back. They're maybe in underserved areas, so they would never think, I could build a drone. So we begin this first level of intimidation of sorts, that they're saying, I can't do that. But our professional development with the educators teaches the teachers how to lead the students to put the thing together correctly. A very simple mistake like sending a 7mm screw up through a motor because they should have used a 3 or 5mm screw. Something simple like that would be what could happen, but we really want for the students to find success. And so there's a limited number of things that would go together to put together this drone ball, but it starts with plug and play, where the motors are plugged into the flight controller, the receiver is plugged in, the receiver ultimately has to be programmed, but we'll get to that in a second. But as time goes on, as the program goes on, the students ultimately can hold in their hand a drone soccer ball. I bet you I have one around here.
There you go.
We're on video. They can hold a drone soccer ball in their hand and say, Mom, Dad, I built this. And they know how it goes together. And the notion that we now have a student that understands how the basics of a drone are put together is kind of somewhat more advanced than some of the people flying professional drones. You can buy a Phantom, it's already put together, or anything else. It's already assembled. Here, these kids know what the deal is. So that's the first step. They have the bragging rights going, yeah, I did that, where they thought they couldn't do something. And then the next step is to plug it into the computer, where they go into Betaflight, which is a free and open source application. But if they know how to run Betaflight, it's the first page, the first step into a professional career from there. They have to make sure that the radio is talking to the receiver, that it beeps when they press the button, that the LED will change from red, white, or blue, because we want red or blue teams so that you can see when gameplay happens. So I'm sure it's intimidating when they first plug into the computer and go like, what, I'm going to program it? But then they know with confidence, when I flip that switch, those propellers are going to turn in the proper direction, and that thing's probably going to lift off. And we have the flight controller pre-programmed so that there's a throttle cap of about 60% or at 60%, and the aircraft won't tip over more than 15 degrees. We want the 12-year-old to find success. That's the goal. And that's who we tested with. Our first 4 schools and neighbor kids from the team all around and students who were interested, we tested. We understand that about that 12-year-old age is when students really start becoming aware and can be responsible. And a crazy thing that we discovered, not crazy, but we found that the students that we just handed a drone ball to and said, here, would you test fly this? How does it work for you? If they had not built it, they'd send it to the moon. They'd bounce it all over. Well, see, we can wreck it. But if they built it on their own and they know they press that switch and the motors are going to turn, they treat it like a hovercraft. They lift it up slowly and they find the control. And flying one of those things is first off, it's a sensation of movement when you're just standing there. Your knees still get weak and you still are able to work with it. There's the whole notion of the rudder Where with an airplane, like a remote control airplane, you know where the rudder is. It's the back of the airplane, so it can go flying by. Here, they have to understand the back of the aircraft that they built. So there's many times markings like this. It's a perfect sphere. We can talk about what the shape and all that's about in a moment, but they have to understand that this is the front and that's the back. And so what happens when you use the rudder? Well, don't. In this case, you'd use only your right hand, which would give you pitch and roll. And your left hand would be throttle, with your swinging back and forth would be rudder, but you try to leave to just work with the throttle. So there's some real world flying that happens. And in the past, I've had lots of different things I've had as a job. We talked about some other stuff, but construction progress photography, where you're going and flying and looking at opening after opening to document that building as it's getting built. That's something that you can use almost any professional aircraft for, to capture those. And I've done this, where there I am at a construction site with my steel toe boots on and my hard hat and my drone, and I go into a courtyard that there's water, there's mud, and it's first thing in the morning to be there before everybody else when the wind is right, because in a courtyard, the wind's going to come swooping down into that area. And so there I am trying to capture each window, a proper shot of each window, and getting down into it, there you lose all the satellites. So instead of my 12 satellites, I'm nothing. I have to manually fly. And if my props hit, I'm dead meat. It's going to drop into the water and my day is done. Knowing how to fly a drone like this, those students are learning how to fly manually, where so many times people are just flying their satellite. They're flying their tablet and they know, okay, I'll come here and land. These skills the kids are getting from the very beginning are just fantastic, because they built this and they're flying. So the next step, if I may,
I was just going to say they're taking that ownership of the machine that they built, learning the practical skills, the manual skills on how to fly it, and so they take more care. But then they get they get the education they need to figure out what situation they might be in the real world application. Correct?
So all this has been about workforce development. It's not at all about a game so far, but ultimately, then the goal is for the educators and for these students is to be on a team where they learn to fly in a controlled space. So drone soccer is a game that's 5 versus 5. It's a full contact sport that happens in a netted arena that, according to the World Air Force Federation or Fédération Aéronautique Internationale, under the rules FAI F9A-B for this size, the 20 centimeter, according to that, it's going to be a 10-foot wide by 10-foot high by 20-foot deep netted arena. That there are 2 goals inside the arena, where what the pilots attempt to do with their drones, and there's 5 of them on each team. One of them is a striker. That striker is attempting to get through the opponent's goal. They're protecting it. And so they're flying into each other, and that striker will try to get through the goal, and it's a 3-minute set where the refs count it down 3, 2, 1, and then for 3 minutes, there's mayhem where there are goalies, there's forwards, there's sweepers, there's the striker, there's these different positions where there's calculated flight, and the better pilots learn to fly aggressively, where they're going to go shooting through, they're going to have a forward help to block, and you have to get through the opponent's goal, and then retreat back to the halfway mark to then make your team eligible to score again. So this can happen. The scores can run up to 20, 30 points sometimes. It depends. And there's drills the students do where they're seeing how many times they can get through that goal in a 30-second or a minute period. That's part of the skills challenges that we put out there. Now, the neat thing about this game and our approach here is that we're trying to build these students into better people and inspire them to try harder and to make them better people and maybe more successful at life. So this is a co-ed team. We insist on co-ed flight. We can't just be an all guys or an all girls, because people have to work together. And the sooner they find out that, yeah, that person's awfully weird next to me, look at that, they look different. And then they're like, hey, yeah, but they're bringing something to the table, because something else happens as these students evolve. It's really neato. They start revealing who they are. There's the one that says, you know what, I understand that whole thing about plugging it into the computer and programming it. And that's that's your computer scientist of the future. And another is going to go, you know what, the propellers. I wanted to point out that these 2 are different from those 2. One turns right to left, the other turns left to right. That's your mechanical engineer of the future. And the other is going to be like, hey, you know what? stop everybody. Let's sit down and talk about this. Let's plan what we're going to do. Who's going to be? Well, that's your leader. That's the team captain. And the team captain is the spokesperson for their team during any play. We don't want the coaches or the leaders coming in and fixing things or negotiating with the referee to go, yeah, that, or to say, striker down, because if a striker goes down, there has to be something that happens. They stop play real quick. But that is the job of the captain to do, to communicate, because we want to give them a controlled environment to build their real world skills and build their confidence. And we see it's working. It's really incredibly cool to see these kids that are looking at graduating from high school and they want to go to college. They want to be an engineer. They want to be engaged in this world. Whereas before, they're like, yeah, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just kind of thought that I'd sit around and wait. And
Dave,
they wait.
Question. In drone soccer, do both teams have the same equipment to start with? Are they on an equal setting there?
They have pretty much the same equipment. There's a wide open field, but it's all within a certain specification. So they will always have a radio transmitter that's talking to the aircraft, and it can be different approaches. You can have Ghost Protocol or ELRS, just like any of our other usual. If you build an FPV drone, you know what I'm talking about. If you fly any kind of RC, so that's going to be the same. And then the aircraft itself, I mentioned the FAI F9A or -B, excuse me. This is 20 centimeters in diameter, so it falls within that realm. And so the pilots can fly any aircraft they want that's within 20 centimeter oval, can be truncated, but 20 centimeter, and weighs less than 300 grams or less. And they have to have the ability to have LEDs so they can change colors to red or blue, so that you can have red or blue, red team versus blue team. We have a league operating system that does all of our tournament management and stuff, and we assign the blue to reds and stuff, and it makes the game play that much better. But no, it's totally wide open that way. It's going to be 4 electric motors with propellers. Props can't be metal, but there's just a succinct set of rules that, yes, they can come to an event, a competition. At a formal competition, there's technical inspection, where we look at it, say, yep, that's 20 centimeters. Yep, that's 300 grams or less. And yep, everything's strapped on right, because these are students and they're not going to do stuff correctly. And it's an opportunity for us to say, well, your receiver's flopping around. Fly well? Yeah, flies great. Well, it's not always going to, because it's going to break. It's going to get eaten by a propeller. So strap it on, bring it back, and let's make sure. And the goal here is to make sure that if they're going to compete, that they're successful. But yeah, to answer your question, Steve, within a certain set of rules, they can fly anything. And the next is F9A-A, which is 40 centimeters, by the way, aircraft. They're basically 5-inch race quads that go 0 to 100 miles an hour in seconds. And this is going to be in a 5 meter by 5 meter by 10 meter environment, huge expensive cage. And each aircraft is about $700 to $1,000, and damage is real because it's just crack. I've taken Team USA to the World Championship, Drone Soccer Championships, and we saw this. They flew in this. That's a crazy platform. We will see that eventually, I would imagine. At the World Championships, they will fly that. At the end of our national championship this year, Team USA will be in. Nobody knows this one. Here's one for you. Team USA is invited to go to the FAI World Drone Soccer Championships in Shanghai in November. So I'll take that team, the winning team, there. And so that's really kind
awesome.
of
What an experience.
It should be a great opportunity. It should be a great experience. And that's part of it was years ago I was involved, if I may just take a step back. Years ago, I was very involved in drone racing, and took Team USA to the FAI F9U drone racing championships, the world championships. This was actually pre-COVID. And so we went to Shenzhen and Ningbo different times. And it's really incredibly cool to see how this changes a student's perspective, to get them out of their own little town. If you're from Boise or Boston or wherever, you have your perspective on how things are. And when you go to some places crazy as Shenzhen, or a country where you have no idea really what's written on the corner, you don't know how to get anywhere, and so you're so dependent upon other people to make sure you're all good. And there is this food that's put in front of you, and the languages it makes better people, I think, and it changes them and have lots more confidence in who they are when they go home. And I think they're more gentle with other people. When I was involved in that, I was the U.S. delegate for drone racing as the adult in the room, of sorts, for the rules committee and stuff like that. And I sat down with the delegates from Germany and Spain and others, and they said, well, in the same F9A drone sports rule set, there's this drone soccer thing. Have you considered that? I'm like, well, yeah, what is this? So I looked into it, we talked about it, and to me, the first thing I thought was the promise is that if we put drone soccer together in the United States, that means any kid can be on a team and represent their city, their state, their region, and ultimately their country. That's a rare opportunity to say, we are Team USA. You can't just say that. But if you're engaged with the World Air Sports Federation, which is a subset of the International Olympic Committee, we can say that. And so like, wow, that's really cool. So instead of just taking the fastest 3 pilots, female pilot and junior pilot, team of 5, we could have a team of 5 or 10 students that could do this. That's when we set out. I formed a team. I thought that's a neat idea. I formed a team. We looked into it. We developed this drone soccer ball. We started an organization, a company called Drone Sports. We developed this. This is 8 annular wings, individual wings, basically, that allow the air to go straight on through the aircraft. Yeah. And so we have not thrust vectoring. I've been told that's wrong. I want to look at it that way, though, because from the movement of the propellers and the dynamics of how that happens, then also the air comes in completely undisturbed and goes out undisturbed. So it really makes a great aircraft. So we worked on the development of that, what the wing would be, how we would mass produce that. We formed partnerships with iFlight to make these for us and mass produce them for us so we could come to market. The last time I went to China prior to COVID was December 2019. I think I brought it home and gave it to everybody, but that's when I had a 3D print. Yeah. I was called, anyway, let's not get into that. It's a silly story. I was patient 0. But ultimately, we spent then COVID, our secret project and our weekly carry on our meetings and stuff with iFlight got us to the point where we have the plug and play flight controllers. We have motors that are very specific to what we're doing. We've developed propellers with GemFan, the makers of propellers that are specific to drone soccer. They're really super efficient. They're quiet. So we did a lot of work to put together what the offering would be just that way. Then we had to find arenas that are 10 by 10 by 20. We knew that we didn't want to go the 40 centimeter size. That's crazy. The 20 centimeter size, we wanted to make a product or a bundle that was palatable to a school. Because this is not something you can just go down to your local Walmart and buy. You're not going to go buy a drone soccer ball to do this. We have them in 6 packs or 12 packs in a bundle, where it's the arena, the goals, which, I have one. This is our aluminum goals. It comes into small little pieces, but pieces together, and this is a 40 centimeter diameter goal. We had to have those, all these things figured out. And so actually COVID was kind of okay for us because there was no expectations. We just kept going, learning how to make bread and build the whole drone soccer program. We built a league operating system at fly.dronesoccer.us where all tournament management occurs. All the teams are registered. All the players are registered on their teams. They develop an ELO. They have a history, the wins, losses, and all that stuff. That ultimately, if they play esports, this whole league operating system is a subset of esports operating systems and management of tournaments at universities across the country. There's tens of thousands of students that are within that platform. So we'll have something called an LOS portal, or a league operating system portal. So colleges can look into the portal to see the students and their progress in esports on all the different esports platforms, World of Warcraft, League of Legends, all the different. So this is that, and so their world within this league operating system is fantastic. And we use it for building the tournaments. So we have 11 different districts. We're a special, U.S. Drone Soccer is a recognized special interest group for the Academy of Model Aeronautics, or the AMA. And if anybody flies RC airplanes, they're members of the AMA. They fly at their local clubs. I have 2 since I was a kid. I love stuff that flies. But we're the special interest group for drone soccer, for F9A, for the United States. So we break our districts, or our country, into 11 districts, the AMA districts. And so that means that as we go through our season, all the play happens within the district and all the keeping track of the competitions. So we had, through this last summer, we had our summer series, which we had the teams report in what they did. And the idea was to just encourage them to practice and scrimmage. And we gave them points for scrimmages, just so we could see who was scrimmaging more than others. So we were able to establish a national ranking. Then as we went into our season that opened in September, and we go into, through the May to end the season, but we had district qualifiers. And then recently we're going through a series of district championships. Each district, there's anywhere from 3 to 15 teams per district that get together. In New York State, we have 50 different schools that are active in playing drone soccer. So we had 5 regions that led to the district championship. That now there's some really good play coming out of out of New York. We started in Colorado with 4 teams and 4 schools, and now we have, I think, about 10 teams in that area. Southern California is a hotbed, but ultimately we have about 300 programs across the country that have come together.
Yeah.
So that's kind of exciting. And a lot of our talk was, how do we scale this? And our goal would be to, we built a program that could be in every high school in the country. We built something that STEM teachers and CTE teachers can bring in, and we have lesson plans that are built for them that have next-gen science standards, so federal and state-based science standards applied to the lesson plans. And the educator teacher knows how to go in and say, oh, here's the lesson plans, and here's the alignment, and then they submit that into their administration, stuff like that. We want to make that an easier path for the educators to be able to bring it in. So
if a teacher wasn't interested in getting U.S. drone soccer at their school, what's the process?
There's 2 different ways you can go. You can go to dronesports.us, and Drone Sports is where you would get the equipment, the bundle of equipment for the arenas, which, by the way, are made in Michigan for the pop-up type. And we also have some inflatable versions that come to us out of France that we worked with Michelin to have the inflatable version for that. So they would go to Drone Sports and submit an inquiry there. You can reach out to us at usdronesoccer.org, and we're going to answer all kinds of questions for you and help schools or educators get connected with Drone Sports to get the equipment. And as that happens, it takes about 30 days once the order goes in and stuff, but there's a transition where then U.S. Drone Soccer brings them under our wing. We know who they are, and Drone Sports is officially licenses the U.S. Drone Soccer brand and stuff. It's kind of like a Wilson basketballs in the NBA, I guess. We bring them in and say, okay, welcome. They go through the professional development within, that's the first step. And that's where they learn how to put the aircraft together. They understand how league play begins to work. And then we bring them into U.S. Drone Soccer and bring them into the community. And within the community, we have a members area. That's where the lesson plans exist, and an extensive resources guide that's just pages and instructions and videos on how to put together competitions. Just recently, like in the last 10 days, released our drone battery charging station training and certification. Because charging a battery is a very serious endeavor. And when we're at the national championship or district championships, or just anybody who is engaged with this, it's a good idea to know how to charge a lithium polymer battery as safely as possible, how to read the charger and to set it at a right setting, and how to stand there and not walk away, and all these different things, what to do in case there's a puffy battery and all those. So we release that into certification, and then we'll have referee certification or training and certification that probably will come out in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So we continue to try to move forward to become better.
Hey, James, I'm curious. What are some skill sets a participant in drone sports that you would like to see carried on into someone pursuing a drone education or career?
Well, as Robert was saying, David was saying, just in what they have covered and what their students are doing with the kits in the process of building, programming, and flying the drone, that's huge in a lot of different pathways, as he stated earlier. It's a factor of understanding the overall design of the aircraft, the internal functions of the aircraft. When you get into that beta flight firmware, you're talking about proportional integral derivatives, PID tuning, and things like that as well. Actually, one of the questions that I had for David was, as students have more time spent, they've gone through the in the drone soccer with the kits, as they go through and they spend more time with the systems, do they get a lot of experience kind of like maintaining them or, doing any repairs on the aircraft as part of the kits, just making sure, because I'm sure they're going around, banging around in the cage, they're probably up to have some breakages or, failure over time and usages over extensive use. So I was just curious about that, because that's another important skill, a great skill to have as a pilot in the field. If you know how to also fix something or repair something as a commercial operator, that's a big bonus for when you're considering as an employee or a candidate in the commercial field or even in the flight testing field as well.
Maintenance is really important, and keeping up with it. One person really can't keep up with the fleet of 6. This is a full contact sport. I know because I played that game at the beginning. Also, I also know that it's not my role to do that maintenance. It's the student's role to do that maintenance. And in a 30-minute match, there's only 3-minute sets. And so the first 3 minutes go, well, then they have 5 minutes to do reparations, to repair new props, fix the exoskeleton, maybe adjusting or calibrating the accelerometer if they even are, but so they do have to understand how to do maintenance and repair in a real rapid way. And then the better teams show up with solid aircraft. And so there's preventative maintenance that's going to go on. And a lot of the technical inspections, when I'm looking, I'm going, well, look at that propeller. Boy, that thing is chewed up, because they do take punishment. And the propellers will get beat up. I can listen to one go, your propellers are bad. One of them's bad. And then I showed them the little bent one. So I worked with a really neat young lady at a competition that was on my own homebrew team, that she didn't understand that the propeller looked like it was turning the right way, but she had an opposite propeller turned upside down. And I didn't want to tell her. I wanted her to go through the process. And finally she said, I got it. This thing's upside down. It's wrong. I'm like, yes. And she'll never forget that lesson. So maintenance is a really important thing. And to be able to troubleshoot is really important. And I do think that there's times when they do have to go back into beta flight and calibrate that accelerometer, or make sure that thing is working, whatever's happening. And so it's a constant thing to keep them maintained. So then, Steve, you asked a question too. It's all related. What is the real skills I want them to learn? And we want them to learn leadership. We want them to become much more confident in who they are. We think these kids didn't have any confidence, and they walk in, they built the drone, they programmed it, they flew it successfully, broke it and fixed it. And now they're on a team where they're going to come in and walk in proudly and think they're going to beat that other team. And then they beat them. One win, they're like, yeah, that was great. And I've seen some souls get crushed and crumbled because they weren't ready. They weren't prepared. I had a conversation with some kids this last weekend. They were mad at one of the leaders, said, you can't get mad at her. Ask yourself, what could I have done better to prepare for this day? Because you came in and you're trying to solder things over here. What are you soldering? Why didn't you do that before? So it's a leadership thing, or an inspiration to try a little bit harder and then have a little bit of success, so that they're like, hey, that worked. That's good. And I really think they're paying attention better in school. This is giving these kids an avenue that if they're not, they definitely are trying better in school, because they have to think about these things. And it's the joy of flight, all just wrapped into one, where if you've ever flown something, you're like, hey, this is so fun. Even if it's a little tiny whoop, or if it's a big airplane with a gas engine, or full scale. It's all like, gosh, that sure was cool. That was a long, slick landing. And here, it's the same thing. These kids really enjoy what they're doing, ultimately. And there's a real exponential scale or curve in their learning, their ability to fly. That they start out, and again, that whole sensation movement, like, woo, woo, and then they get used to the notion of don't use that rudder, or use it very carefully, know where you're going. And then they start zooming around, and they get better and better. So there's so much learning that happens in the second year for the maintenance, for the leadership, for the flight skills, that we kind of keep them growing.
Yeah. And it culminates to the national championships, which happens here May 2nd and 3rd. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to have it in Washington, D.C. We have a...
Tell us about that. Tell us how the national championships work. How can people see it? All that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, as I said before, we have our district championships that are happening across the country, and we're just finishing up. I think we have 2 or 3 left to complete, and that'll be in 2 weeks. And then we have a field of teams that we've been tracking carefully, that we have representation from each AMA district, except for one. I think Pacific Northwest, we still are waiting for teams or looking for teams to get started. We have a small group there, but we won't have a team from that particular region or that district. But ultimately, we have a group of teams that have qualified to be invited. They got first or second place within their district. And then we also have wildcard slots where we're granting wildcard slots to teams that have applied and have a good reason. And we've received some really neat letters from teachers and leaders and educators fighting, or not fighting, but stating the position of students. And it is all about what we just talked about. And so it's like, you guys put it in writing. Thank you very much. The impact it's making and that they're dedicated to the program. And so would you please go ahead and allow this team a wild card slot? We will fill that as well. Quick side story. That happened last year in our national championship. We had a team from Long Beach, California, Sato Academy, really a neat school. Kids apply to go there. They get accepted. It's quite an exceptional school. It's on the nice side of town. These kids are really, really cool. They won the national championship 2 years ago, the very first national championship. They came walking in loud and proud, strong, showed up. And so this last year, when the district championships occurred, they did really well. They earned a spot to the national championship. But one of the teams that was in Long Beach on the other side of town, Cabrillo High School, reached out. The leaders reached out and sought a wild card slot. And said, please, here's all the wonderful reasons, and we really think it'd make a big impact on kids, and please give us this opportunity just for the experience of it. So all we want is just the experience. And we talked about the experience that this offers for the kids. You get a trip to Washington, D.C., and it really is eye-opening to go and see a really wonderful place like that and all the things, but then be able to walk into this competition where last year we had 16 teams. We took over this big, giant field house at this big, giant complex. It was really cool. Well, Cabrillo High School came in, total unknown. They watched everything happen. We had a team from Turkey that showed up just because exhibition and they wanted to experience as well. Well, Cabrillo High School swept the tournament, and they're the national champions. Right. So when we get a wild card request, we're like, yeah, we think your program has awesome potential. And again, it's about the experience, but that team from Cabrillo, I will go to Germany next week to Stuttgart, just outside of Stuttgart, with Team USA, FAI Team USA, and they will compete against teams from across Europe and a team from Hong Kong and from somewhere in China.
Just to set that up, David, what does a typical season look like for someone going to the championships? How many games or how many matches did they play? How many did they have to win? What does that look like?
In order to get into the championships or at the championship?
To get even eligible to attend the championships.
They have gone through district qualifiers as often as possible. There was at least, there's half a dozen games within that realm that then they get to the district championships, and it depends upon the district. They've gone through several months of competing, from the initial scrimmages where we nationally ranked them to the qualifiers. We've continued ranking, and we'll continue with that ranking notion because it allows us to do seeding properly. But ultimately, by the time they get to the national championship, they probably have gone and competed in formal games 20 or 30 times, 20 or 30 matches to get there. And then the national championship, if we field a team of 24 teams, which we're upticking from last year, from 16 to 24, and it looks like we'll get there. If not, it'll be 22. But that ultimately will result in a 45-match tournament because it's double elimination. So it's really quite a schedule. When we look at 4 arenas, 30 minutes per match in an arena. One arena will have about 5 or 6 referees surrounding it just to help make sure everything plays. We continue to refine that whole process, but still requires that. So when the championship unfolds, there will be quite a lot of noise. It's nice noise. It's drone soccer noise. But it starts out in, again, it's just double elimination. And so we start with, if it's 24 teams, the top 16 or the lower 16 initially play in the first round to just try to send teams into the lower brackets, if you will. And so then the top 8 wait in the third round for what happened in the first. Actually, I guess it would be in the second round, but they wait to hear or just to get to some of the best pilots. It turns out to be quite a growing experience because the flights get better and better in any kind of tournament like this. Even in the smaller districts where we start with, a qualifier could only be 3 teams in a district because it's continuing to try and grow, and teams have trouble making it sometimes. There, what we do is a round robin, where we have every team play every team so they get used to the cadence of how the tournament plays. They get better at that 5-minute period, the repair periods, and communicating with each other. And then we send them through the double elimination tournament. And that ends up being 5 more matches.
Well, I know you're on a little bit of a time constraint.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to find out what's next for drone soccer. What is our future developments, partnerships, anything like that going on that you can talk to us about?
Is it going to be something that adults can get into?
Well, I think there is talk about the future of drone soccer. We look at the large format and we see it as very difficult. It would be collegiate level, but the investment is gigantic. And so it might get smaller. There might be that idea of getting a little bit smaller so that it could be an adult thing that you go into an environment and there's some hoops. And so it's a whole line of sight competition. We're talking about that. For the meat and potatoes are down the middle of the road of what we're doing with the F9A-B. We'll continue to grow that. We actually expand at about 8 to 10 schools per month. So managing that properly and carefully to get to the point where there's maybe critical mass, but there's enough involvement and engagement. I have to point out that none of this has been done by an individual. This is completely collaboration. It's us working together. Christian, you reached out to us, or we reached out to you, and we're talking, and now we're saying, what can we do? Similar conversations happen all across the country, all day long, when we're talking to different partners. So we're going to continue to focus on trying to a great association to bring these students along. And we're really inspired because we're working with people of a similar ilk. Everybody wants to do this. It's going to be fun if we can find a way to do it smaller, if that's the future. That would be a side project kind of a thing. But really what we want to continue doing is reaching these students and seeing what we can do to grow the program and recognize these students better, maybe scholarships, maybe a better pathway or a more defined pathway into an aeronautical university directly from start drone soccer, get engaged, get involved. By the time that a teacher's finished or up and fully engaged with us, they're in position to get their 107. We want to make that available for students as well. So if they have their commercial license to fly and they graduate from high school and they can manually fly, they're in a great position to be a contributing member of society. We see what's happening. It's nuts that back when we first started, like, what? There's a job flying a drone? I could do that? And now we see it happening and we know people that are doing well with it. And that could just be the very beginning of a young kid's career. So we'll continue focusing on that as much as possible. Awesome. I appreciate the opportunity to meet you guys. It's really excellent. Thanks for the nice questions.
No, this was a great opportunity because I'm the event coordinator for Sonoran Desert Institute. So part of my job is to find cool stuff to go see and be involved with and everything like that. And when I found U.S. drone soccer and how it's actually played and the excitement of it all, I was pumped. So I wanted to see what it's all about. Met you and Greg, and it's fantastic. What final message would you have for folks looking at U.S. drone soccer?
Please come and visit us at usdronesoccer.org. If you go to fly.dronesoccer.us, you can see our tournament vehicle in action. If you look ultimately in the dates, you can go to usdronesoccer.org and sign up for our newsletter. We'll make sure that we invite you. So we probably are going to be streaming live the U.S. Drone Soccer National Championship. We have all pieces in place. In fact, we did it last year quietly just to our YouTube channel. So if you're signed up, we'll make sure that everybody knows where to watch the national championship.
And I'll be posting all the links here in the description. David, thank you so much for your time, your conversation, your information. James, Steve, thanks for joining us. That's been this episode of The Flight Path. For more information about Sonoran Desert Institute's programs on UAS, go to sdi.edu today. Request information, talk to an admissions rep. But we appreciate everybody that's watching. If you enjoy the content, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.